Good evening. Good evening and happy 2026. I'm very, very pleased to be here again, and we have a treat tonight. This is my fifth conversation. As you know, I've been having a series of conversations, one-to-one mentoring conversations, and today I have one of our allies who is also a mentor of one-to-one mentoring, and I'm going to leave her to introduce herself. So if you can kindly tell us your name and your role in one-to-one, you're very, very welcome, Doctor.
Hello. I'm Naomi, and thank you for having me, by the way. So I'm Naomi Elton. I'm an ally with One2One Mentoring and have been for a few years now, I think.
Yes.
Um, um, a career coach for doctors primarily at the moment, and I also work as a systemic therapist, which is a family therapist by another name. And in my previous career, I was, until I retired, a child and adolescent psychiatrist.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to refer to you as Naomi, and please feel free to refer to me as Susan. Naomi, we've known each other for many years, isn't it? I think this was some years ago around practice. And then I managed to convince you to join one-to-one, which we've been very grateful for. And I know that you have done some mentoring, very successful mentoring for us. I'm really pleased to have you on our show, and I'm sure our viewers and our listeners can't wait to hear the pearls of wisdom that you're going to be presenting tonight. Okay, Naomi, let's go to your profession. You've had an illustrious career as a psychiatrist, as a child psychiatrist, and
Yes,
I know
child and adolescents.
child and adolescent psychiatrist, and I know that you retired a few years ago, but that hasn't stopped you from working. You are very busy, as you've introduced. Tell us about your work as a professional, working in your current interest area.
Well, so I'll start with the psychiatry, and because it's a useful contrast. So obviously I did that for 30 years, for a long time, and it had become it had changed over the years a great deal, and it's continuing to change, probably speeding up, I would say. So what I most enjoy now that I'm in my retirement career is to be able to work creatively and hopefully really skillfully as well in a caring role. But that became something that it the creativity was something that was harder to do as a psychiatrist because understandably, given all the sort of health economics and things,
Yes,
psychiatrists were needed more and more for things like diagnosis
that's
and
right.
risk assessment, prescribing and things like that. And so it was kind of time to change and to launch myself into almost like a second career, really.
Wow. Okay, so you said it's a systemic psychotherapist.
Yes, because I trained in that when
Yes.
I was
Yeah.
training as a psychiatrist, but then it became harder and harder to be a systemic
Okay.
psychotherapist whilst also being a
Yeah.
psychiatrist.
Okay. So is that so you're doing more of the systemic psychotherapist now?
Yes,
Oh,
and
right.
I really do love it. It's lovely to learn new things,
Yeah.
and it's lovely to be able to really integrate all the different strands of your learning and bring them all together.
Okay.
That's what I particularly
True.
love doing.
True.
I'm also
True.
really drawn into trying to resolve conflicts. So whenever I get the chance to work with a sort of a conflict situation, I particularly enjoy getting my teeth into those.
Okay. So just for our listeners and viewers, what in a nutshell, what does a systemic psychotherapist do? What actually what is it about? Just very briefly.
Well, a systemic psychotherapist, I work with individuals, couples, and families
Mhm.
mostly, and they sort of help the person or people to understand the connections between them, the
Yes.
relationships, the connections between each other's thoughts and feelings, and the things they do. Everything that happens is happening through conversation.
Wow. Okay. So what would you say you enjoy most about what you do?
Well, I think it's the magic of conversation, really. It's the fact that, and it's not so much necessarily the things that I say. It might be the things that the people in the room say, the things they hear themselves say, or they hear each other say, that perhaps they haven't had the chance. And quite often, families will have a conversation that they've wanted to have for a long time, but
Mhm.
haven't they've been fearful to have it because they think that things will escalate and that they might make things worse. And to be fair, of course, that can happen. Things sometimes do get worse
Mm.
as a consequence of a conversation. So people are often right to hesitate sometimes.
Yeah, it's very interesting you being on the different sides of the table, where you've been practicing as a medical doctor and now you are practicing as a therapist. And I'm just trying to bring some kind of crossovers, particularly looking at, obviously I'm a doctor like yourself, but I'm also a coach like yourself. You're also a career coach and mentoring. And I know one of the things that we have to sharpen is our listening skills, isn't it? Our
Yeah.
communication and our listening skills. And do you find that you have to put different hats on when you are doing sort of your coaching, your mentoring, or your therapist? And if you have to do that, what would you say would be a fundamental difference when in terms of some of these skills?
Well, I mean, that's interesting you should ask it that way because I
Mhm.
thought you were going to say what's the difference between being a doctor and being a coach or
Yeah.
mentor. Can
Or
I
a
answer that
therapist?
one?
Yes. Yes, please. Yeah.
Because
Go ahead.
when I first
Yeah.
started training, I don't know if it was like this for you, Susan, but I kept on falling into old habits and
Mm.
sort of almost
Hmm.
having a habit of telling people, making statements rather than asking questions.
Wow.
Or thinking I knew, or thinking it was important whether I knew the answer or not. Whereas actually what I found out in the end was that I suppose I learnt the skills of being curious. I suppose like you're being curious now. And yes, just sort of asking more and more questions and perhaps not always worrying whether I knew the answer myself.
Yeah, I mean, listening to you, I can imagine that that can also sharpen listening skills. And I think this will really benefit some of our mentors actually listening, or some of our coaches, because I always say that I always have to distinguish between myself as a doctor when I'm mentoring or when I'm coaching, between being a mentor, being a coach, and then being a doctor, because you just almost, even though there's a very common thread in all these three things, there's still the skills that need to be sharpened, particularly the way you question, yes,
Yeah.
the curiosity, and even listening, because I know that when you are practicing as a medic and you have time constraints, which if you remember, I'm sure you do after doing this for so many years, you have these time constraints and there's always this temptation to hurry the conversation. And
I
yet,
mean,
with that little patience, if you pull yourself back, something might come up that will make sense. And, I always find myself trying to pull back, because I will then remind myself about, of my sort of mentoring role or my coaching role. And I'm always asking, okay, what will I do if I'm in mentoring? What will I do if I'm in coaching? Just keep quiet. Let them speak. And I remember just very recently, I had some parents and one of them was disabled. And it's so amazing, isn't it, when you have some of these skills, because you actually bring these skills in the consulting room or in the spaces that you occupy. And what I was just observing, because I didn't realize that I was sharpening the power of my observation as a mentor and as a coach. And what I realized was that actually I noticed the family had a tendency to kind of talk over this person who struggled with hearing and struggled with speaking and also being in a wheelchair. And I had to constantly remind them to allow this person to talk. And then I had to actually be intentional about directing my conversation
so
at this
you
person.
were actually teaching them to listen
Yeah.
to their family member.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, hearing you and looking at your journey, where you are still a medical doctor, and yet and then you were a coach, then you were a
No.
mentor.
Yes, I'm not
Yeah.
still a medical doctor. I actually gained it
You
point.
were very well.
Yes, I
I
was,
know
but then I
that was your career. Just that you're not doing you're not practicing as a medical doctor, but you still have DR in front of your name. That's what I mean.
I
Isn't
do. Well, you're allowed to have DR in front of you, but
yeah,
I'm not licensed.
to
I
practice.
gave it all up because it was quite costly to keep all those things up. So you have to make a choice in the end.
Yeah. But what I mean is that you trained as a medical doctor. That's what I
You
mean.
did, and then you are still allowed to use the word. In fact, I should have put it up
Exactly.
in
Yeah,
front of my
yeah.
name.
You trained as a medical doctor. You've had a career as a medical doctor, and now you're doing something else. And but those things that you learn, you still utilize those skills, isn't it? Within
Ye-
those whichever spaces you occupy.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So, what lessons would you say you have learned over the years that have contributed to the professional you are today?
Well, I think it's a really interesting question. I think for me, it
Mm.
was especially when I went into the second career, the retirement career,
Yes.
and I became very conscious of what I was learning. And one of them was to reach out and ask for help. And another one was to follow opportunities when they arose, or even to make opportunities. And with that one, what I noticed was that if a door was closed to me, then I might not always realize it was closed. It might take me a while to notice that the door's closed and I'm not going to be able to open it. It happened with a few things, a few quite big things. And then in contrast, if there was a door that was either open or could be opened by me, then that was much more obvious if the door was open or could be opened. And I began to learn the difference between a closed door and an open one. Does that make any sense?
I'm very interested, and I think our viewers and listeners and mentees will be very interested in this point. So no, go ahead.
Well, I mean I just had a few examples, but it often boiled down to if you would reach out to somebody
Yes.
and the person, instead of being a bit iffy, they were kind and welcoming. Well, actually, like you were in one-to-one mentoring
Thank
network,
you.
there's an example. If they were
Yes.
kind and welcoming, then you kind of knew straight away there's a door there open for you. And that happened a few times with a couple of organizations that I now work with. And actually it
Yes.
happened with the writing of the book as well. And then there was one more thing I learned as well, which is to be compassionate to yourself as well as towards other people.
I'm liking hearing the fact that closed doors happen to everybody, open doors happen to everybody. So, for you, in your experience, if you identified something as a closed door, are you just thinking, okay, this door is closed, so I'm not going there? Or have you also had instances where you would have felt that the door is closing, but you could do something to keep the door open?
So, well, one really good example is about when I trained to be a mediator. And
Mm,
I put quite a lot of time and effort and a bit of money into it
mm.
to training to be a civil and commercial mediator because I thought it sounded rather glamorous and rather fun. So I did that. And then I found that I just couldn't get my foot in the door.
Wow.
Yeah, just couldn't do it. It
Mm.
couldn't be done. And I did so much networking. I found people to work with. It must have been several years. And in the end, what I found was I just had to acknowledge that um, it seemed to me, I might be completely wrong, and it may just be me making up a story to make myself feel better, but I decided it was a retirement career for barristers. And
Right.
that might have been, to me, I told myself that's possibly why I couldn't get into it. So it
Okay.
wasn't, I realized it wasn't about me, it was about the context. So I
That's
didn't
right.
take it too personally. But then what was really weird and interesting was that I met some family therapists at a study day that we were
Mhm.
doing. And I was telling them this story of what happened to me. And this family therapist said, why don't you become a family therapist instead? Which
Wow.
I then did because I had a prior training in it. And
Mm.
I began to find I could work with sort of like intergenerational disputes within a family
I
and
see.
use what I'd learned in a different setting. So I think what I learned in the end was if the door's closed, you could ask yourself, why do I want to do this so badly? And can I find another way, a completely different way to achieve that same broad goal, just differently? But
Wow.
it took a lot of time. It took many years.
That is deep. So the common saying that says that if at first you don't succeed, try again. It's good. You can try again, but when it comes to a point where you're trying and trying and trying, you really need to now take a step back and reflect and possibly move direction. And I think one of the things that you've highlighted is the power of networking, the power of talking to other people and not keeping things to oneself, because it is through some of these things that then moved you on, gave you some ideas, some opportunities also came your way.
But when I was networking amongst, let's say, barristers and
Yes.
people like that, which it was great fun hanging out with
Mm.
barristers, but it obviously wasn't right for
The
me
right.
because I
Yeah.
wasn't a barrister. So it was only when I began to talk to different
Yeah.
groups that, so I suppose, yes, try different strategies and talk to different, perhaps slightly different
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you didn't give up.
No, I didn't give up.
You
I
just changed
kind of,
direction.
yes,
So
I
that's
kind
good.
of, yes,
That's
yes.
good. And it highlights resilience and the importance of resilience because people give up very easily. Naomi, what tools do you think people starting out in their career need to develop? What do they need to develop a strong work ethic? Because strong work ethic is very good. And I mean, this obviously can help benefit mentors as well as mentees.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what are some of those tools?
Yes,
Um,
yes, I think it's a really good question, and I know it's really, really important in this community about a work ethic. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking that it can be really, really hard to predict what you're going to enjoy or find stressful. And sometimes you may think that something's going to be really, really hard and make that assumption, but actually it will turn out to be really enjoyable. So I think our ability to predict is quite poor. And I think especially if something makes you feel anxious, then I think it's then that your ability to predict is even more poor.
mm,
And I think sometimes if you're finding yourself anxious about something, that can be a sign
see,
that it can be a sign that it's something that which is really important to you. So you can reframe feeling anxious as kind of eager anticipation. And then I think the other thing is to maybe sometimes break things down into manageable chunks and then almost set a time that you think, wait, that you will be able to do it. And I think if you do that, you may find that you will do more of it than you expected.
okay. So going to obviously you are one of our mentors and we'll say allies. So as a mentor supporting a mostly Black mentorship charity, how will you define inclusivity and allyship in practice, really? Well, what will be something in your opinion, right? Because you made a decision to support, to be part of this organization. How would you say your role fosters that or encourages or enhances that?
Well, I think it's about being willing to be a follower
Mhm.
rather than a leader. I think it's about, I remember I used to have a colleague who was always saying how important he thought followership was. I think I'd reached a really good point in my career where I was kind of quite keen to be a follower rather than always thinking I knew everything. And I think it's about being willing to learn and listen rather than pretending that you know everything.
Everything. Okay. So, what motivated you to become involved in mentoring within a Black-led organization?
Well, I think it's well, I had just done mentoring training and I had just retired, and I'd been in a leadership position in the NHS. So I suppose I had experience of how organizations can, without meaning to be, they just be quite toxic. And,
Yeah.
when cuts and things happen in particular, people can be harmed. And so I just wanted to put something back. Obviously, the other aspect is the world we live in is a very cruel and often terrible place. And so it's a combination of all those things, really. I suppose another thing
Okay.
is wanting to learn and to learn about cultures different to my own.
How has cross-cultural mentoring expanded or challenged your perspectives? What do you think? How has this impacted you, your practice, your thinking?
Well, I think one thing which I've sort of learned, but I hope I already knew, is in a way how much we are all the same as humans. That we are, in some very fundamental ways, that we, for example, can all be made to feel very insecure. So think I think that's one. But then, of course, it's also about our differences, that we've grown up in different races, in different cultures, and we've had different
Mhm.
life experiences. So, of course, we're also going to be very different. So it's about celebrating the things that that we're the same about, and the
Mhm.
things that we're different about.
Okay. And what, in your opinion, would you say that being an ally or allyship in general, yes, having people like yourself from a completely different culture, from a completely different community, how would you think that allyship can address systemic barriers for some of these communities? I mean, what is your opinion about how allyship can help people in my community, for example, or people coming from minority ethnic community overcome some systemic barriers?
Well, I think that I mean, it's more tricky for me but now that because I'm not in an organization, not really. So I have to be creative again, how I spread the word. And I suppose writing career planning for doctors was co-writing it, I should say, because I'm one of two authors in it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
when we wrote it, we really wanted to, number one, well, mostly influence individuals so that they could see what the problems were that they were up against. And we have put a couple of chapters and sections in for people, Black and minority ethnic people, or international medical graduates, to help them to know that some of these issues are real, that they're
That's
not
right.
imaginary, they are really real.
Yeah.
And I suppose our other hope is that
Yeah.
other people reading it will be organizational leaders. And the book includes things on what people can do about these things.
Okay.
So, for example, there are sections in there about the differential attainment gap, which is also called the differential awarding gap. There's another phenomenon called the differential referral gap, which is about doctors being referred to the General Medical Council. Black and ethnic minority doctors are,
Disproportionately, yes.
yes, disproportionately referred. So we've put sections in there about these very unpleasant topics. We have tried to call a spade a spade.
Yeah. So I guess that promoting allyship in some of these ethnic minority-led organizations also fosters understanding. So the more we have
Yes, I
people
probably missed
joining
that bit
these,
out.
yeah,
Yes, you're learning,
yeah,
you're listening,
yeah,
you're learning,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
thinking, and then you can then understand and write about it, about these issues.
And support people more, because I think understanding is very important, isn't it? When people don't know a community, and I'm talking both ways, not just being in a white community or just being in a Black or being in an Asian community, but it's if people decide to just function in silos, that's where we have the problem. And so I think that allyship is one of those things. Allyship and inclusivity breaks those silos.
Yes, I agree. It
You know,
builds bridges,
it
definitely.
builds bridges. Yeah. So I think it's something that is very important to highlight. What advice would you give to mentors who want to support inclusive programs but feel unsure?
Well, I think I'd first say it's going to enrich you, and it will be, extremely um, heartwarming and interesting. Number two, I think you are going to feel like an imposter, and you're gonna just have to live with that. You're just gonna have to suck it up. There's no way around that. Yeah, you are gonna feel like an imposter, and you're going to feel guilty at times by association, because racism and race discrimination and things like this are going to come
Yeah.
up. And you will find ways to live with these feelings. It's part of your role as an ally to find ways to, I want to say, man up, woman up, whichever one it is. And, lean into these feelings.
Okay.
Because they're only natural to feel these ways.
Right. I mean, it's only human, isn't it? As long as
Yeah,
the space is, it's very important that people feel safe. And I think it's also about reassuring people who want to be allies that these spaces are actually safe. But I think it's also important to highlight that, I mean, you wouldn't go into spaces that you wouldn't feel safe. And I'm sure
definitely
you
not.
feel safe
Yes.
within One2One. And that's why for so many years you've been part of us, I guess. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to talk about your publication. Yes. And this is the lovely book, Career Planning for Doctors. And I want to use this opportunity, Naomi, to say thank you, because you actually have donated one of the books to One2One Mentoring. So on behalf of One2One Mentoring Network, I just want to say we really are grateful. We really appreciate the gesture. We want to talk about this book. Well done and congratulations. You are a co-author, and your other, so it's Caroline Elton and Naomi Elton. Is there a connection at all?
There isn't a connection, no,
Wow,
but the
coincidence.
only we're not related, we checked it out. But I suppose, I will say that perhaps the fact that we've got the same name made it a little bit easier to reach out to Caroline, which I did,
That's
many
very
years
good.
yeah, many years ago. There was a time when she was a complete stranger, and then I did reach out to her.
It really it's a very lovely book. And can you tell us a little bit? I know you started talking about it, but if you can just give us a gist about what the book is about.
Well, as I mentioned, I reached out to Caroline because I was coaching a doctor, and career
Mhm.
change was an issue that came up. And in my particular course on coaching mentoring, we hadn't really done career change. So I knew Caroline was a real expert. And then later on, I began, because we got on so well, I began to work with Caroline, doing career coaching of doctors. We noticed that doctors sometimes can experience a real mismatch between their own needs and aspirations and the job role that they find themselves in, because there are 65 different specialties, medical
Mhm.
specialties, and not every doctor knows that. So that it's very, very common for a doctor to slide into a choice just almost by chance, because perhaps they've heard about that particular specialty. Perhaps they've heard of being a GP, or they may have heard of being a surgeon or something like that, but they might not have heard of some other type of
Mhm.
specialty. That's really largely why we wrote the book. I suppose the other thing is we realised that career planning really isn't on the curriculum. It's something that
Yeah.
just doesn't get taught in the medical schools. Um, we just wanted to make it something that everybody could do, and not everybody can afford to have expensive coaching sessions. And the
That's right.
coaching
Yeah.
sessions they're not always provided by deaneries and
That's
things.
right. Yeah.
So, but we thought it's more likely that a person can do career planning if they can just get the book from their hospital library, or even buy the book. It would be a lot cheaper than having coaching sessions.
Wow. Okay. So, where can how does this publication connect to your coaching and mentoring role, in your opinion?
The role, well,
Yeah.
I mean, there are quite a lot of core values,
Mm-hmm.
and there's quite a lot in the book where we are doing exercise, because as you know, coaching and mentoring can involve very much is the person being on a journey of discovery. They're not going to be told what medical specialty to do or what career choice to have. They're going to find it out. So we're going to tell them how to make the decision, how to go about making a decision, what the best method might be. And they are the one that will do the exercises and put really quite a lot of time and organization into it, and then they will be the one that makes their decision themselves. So that's a bit like coaching and mentoring. I think the other thing, the values that we've put in there from
Yeah,
coaching and mentoring
yeah,
are things like asking for help when you need
that's
it,
right. That's right. Yeah.
and having self-compassion and things like that.
Mm,
These are things which very often go with the territory, don't they, of mentoring and coaching.
that's right. Yeah. So where can people connect with you? First of all, first and foremost, if people want to connect with you, and also if they want to get the book, where can they find you and the book?
Well, book is available on amazon.co.uk. I think it's on amazon.com as well for people in other countries. It's not in the bookshops but you can order it through other outlets
Mhm.
as well. And our website is called careerplanningfordoctors.org.
Right. So that's easy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people can connect with you from your website.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's quite easy. Yeah, obviously it's not got the spaces or no underscores or nothing like that. Just careerplanningfordoctors.org.
Yeah, it's very, very well done. Oxford, published by Oxford University Press. Yeah, very good. Congratulations again.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Naomi. So, what is one reflection? We've come to the end of our conversation, and I must say I've enjoyed this conversation. I've learned a lot from you. What is one reflection you'd like listeners to take away about mentoring, allyship, and inclusivity?
Is it that we're humans, as humans, that we will be at our best when we're working together and when we're building bridges and we're not in silos
I know.
and we're not othering each other and we're coming together and accomplishing a lot more that way than if we were in our silos.
Yeah, Naomi, look, you are one of our valued mentors, as you know. We work very well together. You continue to support our organization. You've been doing this for years. You've actually been assigned a mentee some time ago. And it clearly has shown the benefits of, even for us as One2One, the benefits of inclusivity and allyship. And we are definitely an organization that promotes that, because we know we are stronger if we have, people from different backgrounds in our community. That strengthens everyone really. So we strongly believe that we try as much as possible not to work in silos. I like that. We don't need to be on just individual islands. I try and be as inclusive as you can, because you just make people become stronger. And all these things help to erase some of the unconscious biases that could be there. People can get a bit scared or anxious if they don't know something. But if you are part of an organization where you begin to learn the culture, you get to learn what people struggle with, then some of these things actually it creates more, it fosters and more understanding. Working together strengthens everybody. The career planning for doctors is brilliant. So for people listening, doctors listening, starting on your journey, mid journey, end of your journey, any point in a doctor's career, I would strongly encourage people to look out for Dr. Elton's book, Career Planning for Doctors. It's a brilliant, brilliant book. And I think I'm hearing that there really isn't something like this. This is probably the first of its kind. So I would really encourage our mentees, our mentors, our listeners who are medics to go and look for the book. Heard a lot about the importance of allyship, the importance of inclusivity, and hopefully people listening out there who are not from an ethnic minority community, not from a Black community, not from an Asian community, will not feel intimidated to actually be part of, a network that will have a completely different community. It helps to strengthen communities. So without much ado, I want to say thank you to our viewers. Thank you to our listeners. I hope you all enjoyed yourselves. And I look forward to the next conversation in a few weeks' time. Ciao. Thank you,
Ciao.
Dr.
Thank
Elton. And
you.
thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
I feel very
Thank
honored
you
to
so much, Dr. Elton, Naomi, for coming on our show.